Welcome to your week ahead reading for the week of September 29th to October 5th, 2025. There is very few things happening in the sky this week in terms of transits. There's two, and I will actually talk about them because I feel like it relates to our cards of the week. I already pulled our cards. We're going to run through what the week might look like for you, what energy to expect, and maybe how to navigate that. So towards the end of the week, the two transits that I'm talking about is Mercury is going to be opposing Chiron. So Chiron is currently in Aries, Mercury is currently in Libra, and opposing each other makes me think about, especially when it's Aries, where it's very much about the self, and Libra, where Mercury is about like others and partnerships and how we relate to others. There's might be tension towards the end of the week with how we relate to others, or maybe we're noticing how we view ourselves through the lens of others, or vice versa, how we view others through the lens of ourselves and through our own patterning and conditioning. And yeah, there'll be a lot of work to do towards the end of the week. And I think, again, the cards will talk more about this and we'll touch on that then. I just want to talk about the last transit that's happening this coming weekend, the beginning of October, where Venus is going to be conjunct the South Node. A couple things came through about this, and this will be an interesting time. Venus with the South Node makes me think of Venusian themes, so women, how we connect to others, beauty, balance, sugar. Venus rules sugar, sweets. Women's issues with the South Node, that which is pulling away or sucking out or drawing energy from. One message I got regarding to this was being really mindful of your energy level this upcoming weekend. If you're feeling low energy, pay attention to blood sugar levels. That could be a thing. Seeing how you might go to sweets or sweet treats through comfort, which is fine most of the time, but how often is that happening? I think that's worth considering. Let's see what else. Something else that came through is I will be very curious on a global scale, or maybe even just like a domestic scale, so the US, what will come up this weekend regarding women's issues. Yeah, as I'm saying this, I'm looking outside and the trees, it's all of a sudden gotten really windy. So I'm thinking about maybe conversations being had around women's issues this upcoming weekend. And yeah, I'm just curious to see what will come up around that. I just felt like I need to share that. Let's get into the cards. For the energy of the beginning of the week, so I'm thinking Monday, Tuesday, we pulled the Two of Cups. And the Two of Cups is in reverse. And it's really interesting what's coming up here. So in the beginning of the week, if you're noticing that perhaps you're feeling not as lit up in your relationship, or opposite, more activated in your partnership, so things are coming up and feeling out of balance. A bee just hit the window near me, and that makes me think of, are you not catching the sweetness of your relationship at this time? The faces of the characters are masked, and in one mask is a leaf or leaves, and one, it makes me think of like roots or veins, where these things together are how a tree survives, right? Like you need the roots to be able to pull up the nutrients and the leaves to obtain the photosynthesis. So you need both. And where is your partnerships feeling out of balance? Now, this might be your romantic relationship. This could also be work partnerships, friendships. What is feeling out of balance this week that could potentially be tended to? And I think we might have to tend to them. And the reason why I say that is because the energy of the week is the hot seat, where we might be put on the spot, where either us or our partners or our friends or our coworkers or our bosses might put us on the spot of like, this feels out of balance. And you might be feeling the same way. I feel like it comes out of left field. So maybe with this warning, it won't feel so much so, but there is a need to rebalance ourselves. We're in Libra season after all. There is some Aries activation, some like fiery eye energy where you just like act before thinking. This does make me think of a little bit of tension maybe in relationship in the beginning of the week. And I'll come back to this in a moment. Midweek, we have the King of Pentacles though. And this might feel more like balance. Here again is the hot seat is now from this card. Is now adorned with leaves and stuff. This makes me think of growth and grapes of his face. Makes me think of things that are fruiting. So I'm hoping that perhaps this like tension at the beginning of this week, like itchiness in our relationships, subsides quickly. And that midweek we're feeling more stable and grounded. And that the solution or solutions to the potential mismatch of energy is quickly found and addressed by all characters. And there's an unattached energy to this King of Pentacles. Look at the way he's holding the pentacle, meaning I don't feel like we're putting all of our eggs in one basket regarding this issue or regarding a issue midweek, that we are able to take the situation and transmute it really quickly. And if that's not your experience, I would invite you again to sit with, because there's energy in the sky this week regarding Libra and Aries. They're opposing each other on the astrological wheel. And Aries is I and the self, and Libra is other. And there has to be a delicate balance between both, because if you're giving too much to yourself and being like self-righteous and doing all things for yourself, you forget about others. And we need others. We do, truly. And the reverse is, if you're giving all your power away and giving yourself to others and being really giving and saying yes and being really amicable, you might find yourself resentful this week. And we have the card addiction. And the reason why I bring this up with the King of Pentacles is how addicted to our patterns, how addicted are we to the way we have been showing up in our partnerships and for ourselves. How addicted are we to the patterns of, people pleasing and giving ourselves to others without being able to nourish ourselves, or the opposite, where we are just being like, all right, I'm on a path and I'm doing all these things and I can't really tend to you right now. You need to. There's a big call for balance this week, right? Like with the Two of Cups reversed, and then we have the King of Pentacles. There is a need to balance the things in our lives. So that looks like money. That looks like our time, energy, resources, because again, it's Pentacles. There is an emphasis here too on, so Neptune is on this card, and Neptune can sometimes be sneaky or deceptive. And honestly, what I'm hearing right now is, before you react in this situation, if you feel like you're on the hot seat, before you react, if you can, be really mindful of how could this person be right if you're feeling attacked? Or how can your reaction to something, how can your feelings be right, and how can the other person be, and there's not like a right or wrong, but how can we hold space for both the them and the us, and the finding balance in that? And where are we addicted to one way or the other, either our people-pleasing tendencies or our tendency to only be thinking of ourselves and how to serve ourselves in any given situation in our relationships. And finally, towards the end of the week, we have the Ace of Wands. And I really love this. It feels like out of thin air, a solution comes. Or out of thin air, there is some energy, some symbiosis in how we're able to address this kind of prickly situation that might come up earlier in the week. And again, that could be inner, like you could be feeling lack of flame in partnership or lack of motivation in the things that you were previously passionate about. But I tend to think this is emotional and relational issue. And it makes me think of how in the beginning of the week, we might feel really focused on this situation. But towards the end of the week, we find ourselves with clarity. Like out of nowhere, out of thin air comes, I just am seeing like a lightning strike, like inspiration of how to move forward. There's a loosening of the grasp that you might have on this situation or the outcome of this situation. I'm really curious. I'm going to just read a little tidbit about this addiction card and how it might show up in our week this week. So this is so fitting because it talks about how we can often be addicted or have compulsive behavior around things that bring us pleasure, or it's often things that we're used to saying yes to. And with the reverse Two of Cups, it makes me think of where are we always maybe choosing the people-pleasing tendencies because we're so used to it, or just keeping silence that we're not feeling lit up by something and just being like, it's going to be great, it's going to be great, and being addicted to it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. And the realization of things are not fine. That you might be put on the spot to have to address that things are not actually fine. Something that does excite me about the energy of this week is I do feel like there is a rebalancing that's going to be occurring with, it might come out of discomfort, like out of friction, but a rebalancing that happens that makes us feel more stable. And the way we address it is less emotional of how we would have faced things normally. And I think that's just right. I think that's fine. It's okay if you're coming up against something that maybe you're used to coming up against that gives you challenge. And this week you have the ability to name that you are addicted to a pattern and that, so the hot seat is ruled or has tarot association with the Emperor. And I just think of the Emperor as facing something very diplomatically. So Libran, which is so fitting for the season that we're in. So how can you face whatever's coming up for you this week in all of this? How can you deal with something diplomatically and different than you normally would? Because you have the ability to name that you're in a pattern, a holding pattern that you are now ready to break. And you might not have a choice. The hot seat makes me think of it's crunch time. And you cannot operate the way you've been operating. It's time to do something differently. I'm really excited to see how this plays out in our life this week. Have a blessed week, and I'll see you on the other side.